Okay, this is our trade section, and pretty much what it says, it's kind of covers all the attributes of the trade. So spread is your first section in here. This is off by default because some things don't have a spread. The important things to know about it, particularly if you're on higher time frames, like we're on a 1 minute time frame, so a 5 second time frame isn't a huge gap. It's what, 6 to 1. But if you have a limited subscription, like I'm personally on a premium, thinking of bumping it up, but I actually like having the restricted permissions because it allows me to make sure Nexus works on the lower levels. What we've got here is a spread of 3 as a default for GPP, JPY. That may actually be a bad spread. This is probably more for a larger pair, but this number you have to go to your broker and figure out what it is because it's just different for everything and everywhere. And this is your backup when this runs out. Because like I was saying, if you have a limited subscription, like I'm on premium, there's a limit of 20,000 bars. It doesn't matter what the time frame is. So if I'm on a time frame of 1 minute, which I am with this strategy, and I'm using a 5 second time frame as a spread, then 1/6 back, suddenly I have no data in the 1 minute time frame. So you have to have a fallback position, and that fallback position is what we estimate as a default spread. It's in ticks by default, but you can change it to price. That's better for Bitcoin because it's such large numbers. Otherwise, you end up throwing a number in there like 34,000 or something, which is really just $34, right? Something like that. No, I think it's in increments of points. Anyway, you get the idea. Or you can use percentage. So you got a couple of ways you can put those numbers. Minimum is saying, I don't ever believe the spread is ever going to go down to zero. So you can throw a minimum in there as well as a default. That's rarely used. It's almost always going to hit the default. The In fact, this is only going to use when you do have live data here. And by the way, this doesn't have to be 5 seconds. You can set it to any time frame you want, but generally low time frames make more sense for the spread algorithm. But you could throw it up to a minute and it might not change too much and it might be okay. I probably wouldn't throw it on an hour. I'd probably be wildly out. Um, the Yep, and there's some information on what that one's about, so you get the idea. This is actually only going to be useful or relevant when there is live data. And you can say, hey, even in live data, if it says the spread is this, at least have this as the minimum. The default is when the data disappears. The minimum is kind of, as the spread's going up and down in calculations, saying how low am I willing to let it go. My general rule of thumb is make the minimum 1/3 of the default. But that's just me. It's not some rule in the marketplace. Okay, let's go down to orders. Defaults to market orders, but you can set up limit and stop orders. If you set up limits and stop orders, then here's the details for it. Entry price is on close. I suggest you leave it on close. The only reason I'd ever put it to open is, well, let's just say do it at your own risk. But there's some information on it for you. The close entry rule, right? Just use that one. This is kind of the mimicking stuff that TradingView does internally. But I don't really have this implemented differently to this anyway. So just use by entry ID. Just don't touch it. Maximum orders is important. I showed this on the overview, I think, or somewhere else. Oh, I put it under a gotchas. This actually defaults to 200, and I'm going to show you the difference. All as it is a memory management tool. It's just saying if we get some large number of trades, like you put a strategy together, so I don't know, 5,000 trades or something. We don't want to use all of that up in memory and then just have it say out of memory limit. So 200 is kind of some reasonable number. But here's the problem. See here, we're showing the first 200 trades and it goes down to zero. That's because there's 247 trades. So you're not seeing the whole equity curve. You're only seeing the last 200 trades of the equity curve. If you want to see the whole equity curve, you got to bump this number up to be large enough to match that. So I'm just going to change it to 300, which it was before we changed it. And now you'll see the entire curve because we have, it's all being stored. So that's a thing if you're having issues with the equity curve. If you have 5,000 trades, you put 5,000, you get an out of memory limit, you might have to find a compromise. Maybe you can go back 2,000 trades or whatever the deal is. So it's an arbitrary number. I think it's useful for most back testing, but you may change it. Okay, now we get down to the limits and the stop orders. Okay, so oh, did I just change that? No, I think that was an accident. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Not sure what happened there. Anyway, the what is this? I can't even remember what this is. Ah, okay, yes. So when you do have limit or stop orders, right? Here you're seeing where an order started. But let's suppose, I don't know, this was the price that you're allowed to enter. But you know, that price was set, I don't know, way back here. Well, you'd get a separate line on that level. And then when you got the order actually got placed because it hit that level, then this stuff would start and that line would end. So that's just a line showing you what the order is waiting for it to be fulfilled. It just gives you a price point for that. No weight limit just means you're not going to cancel the order after a certain number of bars. And you can use an ATR multiplier to you sort of, what is that? How do I put this? Well, this is going to tell you here. But basically, you're taking the higher low of your candle and you're adding some space on for your fill. And that's pretty much what that's doing, is it's just using ATR to calculate some space. You can also do it by a fixed amount of, right? So you got price or number of ticks. So you can also do it by a fixed amount and use this instead of ATR. Okay, going on to the next section, trade risk. This will show you all sorts of information if you want to see how the betting is being figured out on any particular trade. I suggest you don't bother with it. Just let it do its thing internally. But if you want to peek under the hood, there's all your information. Okay, I actually used that for a diagnostic tool when I was developing this, just to make sure everything was working right and didn't take it out. You can plot sort of betting points and stuff. I'll let you read up on that. I think you probably will never use any of this. So I'm not going to go into detail, but if somebody wants to at some point ask me, that's fine. This is the more important stuff. This is actual trading information. That stuff up there is all visuals. Right, your initial capital, this should match the initial capital inside the properties tab. I cannot transfer that automatically. There's no coding ability to do that in TradingView. It just doesn't exist. So that's a manual step you have to take. It comes off equity by default, but you can change to account balance or just say, I only want to do everything relative to the initial capital. But you won't get exponential growth that way, or exponential degrowth, loss, whatever you want to call it. Withering. There you go, exponential withering. God, that's a scary word phrase, isn't it? Okay, so these are your methods. Sorry, we're just saying equity versus the others. I think that makes pretty good sense. You're just betting on that as your starting point, whatever you choose. Now, the dynamic betting is really useful. So here we're making $16,000 after what, 22 days of trading? That's actually pretty nice, starting with $10,000. But we don't know if our betting, which is based on 1%, is really the best place to be. So what we can do here is we can put it on dynamic betting and let it go and try and figure out, and often this is an iterative process. It won't be perfect because it's got all sorts of smoothing and gotchas is the wrong word, all sorts of calculations, right? So now you can see a huge difference in profit there. So where did this come from? Okay, well, it's gone and said that I think you should be betting around 22%, not 1%, based on, win rate, margin, and other things. It looks at a whole bunch of factors and does some figuring out. Has all sorts of smoothing, so it doesn't go wild in trying to figure stuff out. It's got a lot under the hood. Just that's all I can say. It's a lot. So what you can do is you can say, okay, you said about 22%, so I'm going to put about 22% as my starting point now instead of 1%. Because it's got so much smoothing to stop it from moving too far and too fast at once, you might actually get a different number if you put where it ends as your next starting point. And you just let it move around a bit. Okay, so that's just gone off the charts. Like, and you can see here, it's just said that's said I'm not going to bet at all. That did some sort of I don't know, hit probably hit a margin call or something because TradingView is calculating differently to mine. Mine is saying no, we didn't hit margin call at all. We're just off and running and doing great. So, but you can see it stayed around 22. So you can say that around 22% is what you should be betting. So then what you can do is you can go back in here and say, I want to bet 22% at a time. And then put it back to percentage. And now you've got my system is calculated as your optimal betting strategy, right? And that's the way to really trade. And as you can see, the numbers are considerably better than 1% of the time. You might want to look and see what TradingView is saying about, hey, I just ran out of money or something, hit a margin call or something. Maybe you might want to tweak your system a little bit. Mine said we didn't hit a margin call. So you're going to have to look at the algorithms and see if there's anything to tweak or not. So there shouldn't be. Mine should be the more accurate, but I'm not going to say it's an absolute truth because it's all modeling. And sometimes more than one way of looking at something can bring something up than the normal way. But my calculations, I suspect, are considerably more robust than TradingView's in this type of respect. Okay, ignore this. Just only use this default betting like I showed you. Ignore this. Just leave it on. And here's your margin call. So my thing will actually halt if it thinks there's a margin call. And I take care of spreads and things. TradingView at the moment doesn't. Maybe they will in the future. If they do, I might start using them as an arbitrary truth. But until they actually do that and a couple of other things mine does, no, I do too much that they don't. And yeah, so these are just conditions. And this is basically all broker stuff, right? So what you're going to do on a margin call, some details on what's going to cause a margin call. I'm not going to talk each one of these through. They've got information where it's pertinent and calculations are important. So read those, right? And if you have any problems, send a message on the Discord and we'll figure it out. And then these are just some basic fees that you can expect. Can't really ask for much more than that. This is just some visuals on the margin call because I will display it on the screen if it happens. There's another section which will show you where, when it does it. No, actually, no. This is actually ending margin call. Yeah, this is just basically what it's going to look like if you get it. We never did get it because prof kept going up. We never hit it. And these are just ways of putting limits on your betting. So you can bet, absolute minimum max amount in dollar amounts or units of currency amount, I guess the way I put it, units of asset. And you can limit your percentage. You can say, I have a minimum and a maximum I'm willing to bet of my equity now. I don't think anybody should bet 80%. Maximum should probably be more around about 20, 30. The minimum should probably be around, I don't know, 0.5 or something, but that's okay. These are not meant to be defaults. You're supposed to adjust these to your sensibilities. So keep that in mind. And then we're down to a new section. So that's all on the trading section. I don't think there's anything else I can say. I know I did gloss over a couple of things. The things I did gloss over, I don't think you will ever dig into, but if anyone does, maybe I'll make a supplemental section on that. So yeah, that's trading. Well, the trading section in Nexus settings to be precise.